Hello, guys. Welcome back to the second episode of the Teen Intuition Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mason Heitzman.
And I'm Luke Satry.
Are you not a co-host or what?
I do. I guess we started together, so
True. So, Luke, hit me.
hit you. All right. We'll
Yeah.
start with it. So, I mean, ultimately, the topic of this episode is what makes Christianity unapproachable. And I think maybe just to the younger people, I guess, I don't know. What are some things that you think Christianity is unapproachable? What are some reasons?
I think it gets a bad rap because the whole stereotype, like, I think the big stereotype is like that Southern Baptist type of philosophy where it's like, if you don't wear a tie to church, you're going to hell, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, if you don't follow X amount of rules. Like, people see Christianity as rule following. That's like the biggest one for me that I see.
Okay. Yeah, and honestly, I think like a big thing is like, it's not so much like the intellectual side as in if you look at the evidence, because like evidently Christianity makes a lot of sense. If you don't believe me, you just got to read like I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by like Frank Turek. But otherwise, it's like I think a lot of things is really like I want to say like sort of emotional, but like there's also like if you just don't want to, you know, like which is I guess kind of emotional. But I do have some like thing I was reading online of like what like some people thought, and also some things that I thought of like what I didn't like about Christianity, but like before I like really got into it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the first one I have written down is like doing things that are right just because they're right. Because honestly, I think it doesn't make like. I think everyone has this idea that if you're supposed to do it because you're supposed to do it. It's like kind of like the parents "I told you so" kind of thing. And I think that's like really like shallow way to look at it is like because everyone knows what's right, but I don't think they realize why right is a good thing.
Yeah. I was reading this devotional on my Bible app, and it talked about like when you serve like for God and you do like the works of God, or like let's say you go help out at a food bank, or you do some other type like homeless people work, or like distribution, things like that. It's like people get caught up in just doing the act and they forget why they're doing it.
Yeah, I mean like it's ultimately like everything here doesn't matter. Like everything on the earth, it's like
that's like one of the hardest things
the grand scheme of things, like eternity. Like you're like it doesn't matter. Like
it's one of the hardest things to grasp ever. It's like everything that we think is valuable, and like everything can be dialed down to being materialistic. Really, I mean even our relationships with other people, because really all those don't matter except our relationship with Jesus, right?
Yeah, like without like God, like he'll just fade away. Like after you die, it's like he'll just kind of disappear.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up like the evidence-based and like the intellectual point, because there's overwhelming evidence that God is real. You know, like things that we found in the world today, they line up with stories in the Bible and things like that. And like even people like Einstein, like he is like one of the smartest people to ever live, and he got stumped by God, and he's like, I have no choice but to believe in God. Mm-hmm. That's what he said.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to remember who said it. Maybe no one said it. It's kind of like an idea maybe, but it's like there's this like saying where it's like the most unexplainable thing about the universe is that it's explainable. And you're like, yeah, like that's like, cause like the fact that we can predict things and like explain how everything works. It's like, that's pretty crazy. Like the fact that we can even comprehend anything is like, just like the design. But all right, I'm gonna start I want to go through these, I guess like negative interpretations. Another thing I think this is something I thought of a lot when I when I thought of Christianity is it's kind of similar to the first one, like doing the right thing, but it's becoming a pushover, as in like putting everyone's needs like above your own. And I think that's what everyone thinks. What do you have like to say about that? What do you think?
I think when I think of being a pushover, I think of that like that one guy in your church that like is always trying to talk to everyone about like coming to like he sees like a new like kid. He's like, oh, come to our like elementary school program, middle school program, high school program. He's like always trying to get people involved, and he's always trying to push people towards Jesus. And for some people at the jump, that can be very, very intimidating, and they don't want to like come back because they're like, oh, that dude is gonna come back up to me and try to talk to me and try to make me do something, because it's not out. They don't think it's out of their own free will at that point. They're just thinking that this guy is trying to make them do X. And like I think like you know what I'm talking about. You've seen that guy in church that's like always trying to like push a narrative with someone. And I felt like I was a victim of that at certain times. Like when I started going to my church now, I thought that other people were being a pushover to me. Like now I'm like, no, they were just trying to help me, They were just trying to lead me in a way.
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of like a pushover, but like at the same time it's also like not. Like I mean, like I think there's a difference between being really like kind and like just like and like being like really enthusiastic about it versus like, because almost when I think of pushover is I think of like I said, like putting everyone's needs above your own, which I think everyone has this idea where it's like, oh, like you gotta, if you're following Christ, you gotta be like, oh, like you want this, like, oh dude, that's totally fine, like I'll give it to you, like everything, like just like giving everything up for everybody. Which
you
is
want
like,
a Lambo, I'll buy you a
dude,
Lambo.
I'll buy you a Lambo, like it's like everything. But I think I think the difference is, I think what you kind of like people don't realize is like Jesus didn't put everyone's wants above his own. He put everyone's needs above his own, which is like, I think is like a very big difference, because it's like, it wasn't, they're like, oh, I want a nice house. Like they're like it's like, can you imagine like they believe in Jesus and they're like, can you like give me a nice house? I want some good finances. Like, it's like all these things. And it's like, oh no, he's gonna tell them where they're wrong. Like, like, 100%. Spiritually and like,
I have a funny story of when I was like 5 and I just learned like what prayer was. And it's like, oh, if you pray, you can like receive things from God. And I really, do you know who the Silver Surfer is?
Yeah.
I remember it was like at night, I was at the top of my stairs in my old house, and I was like on my hands and knees, and I would pray to God, like, God, please give me Silver Surfer powers. Amen. And then every time after I prayed, I'd be like, oh, it didn't work. I would like always try to like blast Silver Surfer energy out of my hands. I did that like 20 times one night. Just nothing happened. I was like, dang it.
Dude, honestly though, like we all tried to use the Force, but we all know it.
God, make me Anakin Skywalker.
Like, please, just want to move it. No. All right. Here's another thing, honestly, which is like another thing. I think this is another thing that I always kind of thought of, and I think other people the same way, is like when people say just trust in God and everything will be okay. Like, or they'll be like, through God, like everything will be fixed, and cast your anxieties on the Lord, which I don't disagree with, but I think it can look a little bit different than like how people kind of view it, because I think of like, when I think of like through God, I think of it in a very like practical way, because I think everything in the Bible is actually very practical. Like when they say don't do something, like with enough, like assuming you have context, when they say don't do something,
it usually means
you shouldn't do it, because a lot of bad stuff will happen to you if you do. Like, it's like sex before marriage. It's like kind of not the best idea, because then now you have a kid, and like maybe you guys don't even stay together.
It's not like that. It's more like soul tying.
I mean that too, but you know what I mean. Like in a very practical way. Like there's so many things in the Bible that it's like, yeah, like it's actually really practical if you don't lie to people, because now it's like much, it's like your life is so much easier when you don't lie to people. Like, but like through God, I think of like if you followed those, like I'll use an example. If someone says, cast your anxieties on the Lord, I almost think of like obviously like praying about it, but also like because of the promises that the Bible has, it's like if you follow him, like you will, it's like you'll truly be like satisfied in,
is it more like
Jesus.
trust, like you trust in God more?
Yeah, like you have those promises, and you have like, I mean, like, yeah, it's like faith and trust, I think, part of it. But if you follow like God, you'll be more satisfied. I know that from experience. And it's like, and if you put your anxiety on him, I think eventually it'll go away because of the life you're living. It's like, if you live a certain way, your life is actually way more fun than like, and you'll be way more like satisfied every day. But I think that's like through God in a way, even if it's not like magic, like I prayed to God and they just disappeared, which I think they can, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's not always it pans out, you know?
I mean, prayer, I've discovered that like prayer can help with like anxiety and fear and all those negative emotions.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make them go away. It might ease it a little bit. And it's more like I'll pray about it and then I'll forget about it and then I like think about it again. I'm like, wow, that's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, it's probably God.
Well, I think part of it is like the fact that you're focused on God instead of yourself. Like if I could just take myself out of every interaction I ever have with anybody, if I'm just not thinking about myself, it's like my life would be so great. Like you wouldn't, like social anxiety would be gone if you weren't thinking about yourself. Like it just, like that's what it is. You're thinking about yourself, you know?
Yeah.
But then what also happens is you start like treating people differently because you're thinking about yourself. You're like if you, it's like when you really want to be friends with somebody, you know, it's like, oh, I want to be friends with them. Or like a girl or something. It's like, oh, I want to have this girl as like a girlfriend. But the problem is like, you're already thinking about yourself in that scenario. And that's like, that's not, Jesus was never like, man, I hope they don't, I think that I'm weird. Like, it's like, no, like he wasn't even thinking about it. Like, I don't think he had himself in his mind, like really ever. It's like, I mean, you could maybe say like, maybe when he said, God, take this cup from me. But like, otherwise it's like he thought about himself. Like, here's another thing, which as I read online, and it's kind of similar to the previous one, which is it didn't feel real, as in like it only I felt real if I forced it. What do you think about that?
That sounds very personal to me because
Okay.
I didn't really feel God's presence until I gave 100% of my effort. So it's really like you have to work. It's like you get out what you put in. So if you go to church and you just sit there and you just like, oh, I want to get out of this worship. This is how I was. I was like, oh, it's like I just want this worship to be over, and I would just sit through the sermon and not pay attention. I just want to go home, and I get home and I wouldn't process anything. I wouldn't think about anything. But then once the right people got in my life, once the people started leading me in the right direction, I started to try to pay more attention, to try to, worship and try all these things and try to read my Bible, pray more, and all these things. And like, I felt God's presence more. It's not that I felt it more. I could identify what God was in my life, So it's like certain situations, it's like I would just think it's my self-conscience, like talking to me, but it's like it's really God trying to tell me something, Like we had a situation when I was lifeguarding at the pool, and there was this kid on the swim team, and he's diabetic, so he has the like fanny pack on his hip, with all of his like needles and stuff, and like his blood sugar level calculator thing, and it's like this fanny pack.
Okay.
He has.
Wait, was it while he was like lifeguarding or what?
No, it's a swimmer.
It's a swimmer.
It's a swimmer. He's like on swim team.
Okay.
And so I walk in. I was like, he better take that off before he jumps in the water.
Yeah.
And I see him, and I'm like, and then he's getting ready. He doesn't take it off, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I should probably go stop that kid from jumping in the water with his fanny pack on. And then I was like lazy, so I was like, oh, it's like he'll be fine. He'll be okay. Kid jumps in the water with his fanny pack on. He gets out, like instantly notices, gets at the pool, goes to his coach. His mom's there. His mom probably had to pay like another couple $100s to replace.
Because it was like ruined.
Yeah, to replace all that equipment. It's like, now I'm thinking after, it's like, I could have stopped that from happening. God told me to go stop that kid, and I didn't listen to him. And so like that was like a real life consequence that I saw in front of me. And that's when I realized, I was like, I can notice what God's trying to tell me. But the whole point is, when I started making an effort to see God, I saw him.
So like, what I'm gonna play like devil's advocate. Like, so do you think that you only think that just because you believe it? Like, is it only real because you think it's real?
Well, faith is built, right? So I think it's real. I believe it's real because I have faith. If, let's say, I'm going to go get on a flight and go to New York, let's say. And, like, is there a guarantee that flying piece of metal in the sky is going to get me to New York safely? It's not guaranteed. But there is evidence backing up that it could be possible, right?
I mean, that it's most likely. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
that it's so the same thing is with like faith. Faith is evidence-based belief. So I believe what I believe about Jesus because I've read and I've seen what Jesus has done for other people in the Bible and other people in my life. And so I see that happening and I say to myself, I want that. And I believe that. And I've been prosperous ever since.
all right.
You like good answer, good answer.
Like, that's good. I like that. Yeah, I think I kind of relate with that, as in like there was definitely like a lot of times where I was like, you know, like this whole God thing is cool, but like, you know, it felt like I would pray and I'd be like, dude, I'm not really getting an answer. Like it seemed like only if I truly like thought it was real, then it was real.
Yeah.
And
most of my parents' responses to like my problems are like pray about it. I'm like,
yeah.
No, I don't want to pray about it. Like I don't want to pray about it right now, Mom.
Yeah, but I think there's definitely a side to that. But at the same time, I'm like, I think when you're in it enough and you look hard enough, like things change. Like, cause I mean, I've definitely had plenty of God moments where I'm like, dude, like there was things that I didn't want to do. Like when I went to my first like mission trip to like Honduras.
Oh yeah, you did not want to go on that.
Dude, I didn't want to go. And that's the thing is like, I was like, everything, like I didn't, like, I mean, I wasn't even that involved with the church. I didn't have like any friends going really. I had like a couple siblings going. And I didn't want to go. And there, like, I think my brother had even asked me, he was like a leader on the trip. And he's like, would you go if it was free, you know? And like, whatever, all your friends was going, which number one, I was like sitting there thinking, I don't have any friends here, so like, what are you talking about? And number two, I would be like, and I just didn't want to go, and I was like, no, I wouldn't go. Like, as soon as, like, when they had like talked about it, like, hey, like, if people like, you know, are called, you feel called to go on this, like, it'll be hard, you know, but the thing is, I didn't want to go, and then over the next month, like the whole, like I would just keep thinking about it, like every day. It was just always
like
there.
God was always.
I know. I was always like
mind.
convicted to go. Like I was like, I should go. And like I always kept feeling like I should go on the trip, even though I didn't want to. Like I was like, there was no reason for me to want to go. But eventually, like after like a long enough of just being like convicted to go, I like was just like, all right, fine, I'll go. And I signed up and I like went the summer and like it totally like changed like everything in my life, like full 180. Like.
Yeah.
You know, got super involved with the church after that. You know, went another time, and I'm gonna go again. But,
and this time you're like happy to go.
Dude, I'm
like,
so excited to go. I can't wait. But, yeah, and I think there was definitely times where I like even after all that, I still doubt. I was like, is he really real? Is he really real? But like, you know, there's just so many things in my life that I'm like that changed like everything, and to say that like. That was my decision. I'm like, there was no reason that I would like for me to go. Like, there was just no like good reason. But I would just like was convicted, and like I fell into it, and it was like, you know, I gave in and was like, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
What is it?
How would you describe, or how would you explain to someone that says like, oh, like I feel judged, like I feel like other Christians have like judged me about like
that's a really good question.
about like what I do, you know? Because I ran into like a friend and we started to, like talking about faith, and she was like, yeah, I'm not really religious, and I'm like, oh, I'm a Christian. She's like, oh, so like what do you think about me? I was like, what? She's like, what do you think about me? She thought that I was gonna like judge her for not being religious,
for not being Christian.
Yeah, and I was like, no. What I'm called to do is I'm called to show you God through me, through my actions. And then if I feel called to kind of show you and talk to you about what faith is, then I'll do that. But it's not, that opened my eyes. I was like, wow. It's like some people just think that we just judge, that we're so like intrinsically like tight.
Yeah, it's like we're so righteous. It's like no,
yeah, it's like we have this big ego on our shoulders and whatever. And I think some people have that interpretation.
Yeah.
But kind of unpack that for me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, like I think what people have the idea is almost like the Pharisees a little bit, but no, I mean, I written a question down of like people are like, well, Christianity doesn't make sense because there's so many terrible people. Like there's so much like scandals.
Why do bad things happen to good people?
Well, not even that, but like why do good people, as in Christians, do bad things. And like literally like my simple answer is I'm like, they're people. You know, it's like
none of us are good.
No one is better than anyone else. We're all human. And when, you know, there's scandals in the church, I'm like, yeah, there's scandals everywhere. There's you know what's also in the church? People. It's like everywhere that there is like almost like, I mean, people have turned churches into a business. It's like if there's money to be made, they'll do it, you know, and they'll say all the Jesus things, and they're like, but their heart's not in it.
Yeah.
But even then, I mean, a little bit of a tangent, but ironically, it says in Philippians, like Paul wrote, he was like whether, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but he said he's like either like through like your motive being envy or like righteousness. He's like, as long as the word's getting out, like that's, you know, like that's cool with him. Like, like that's it's fine either way. Because it's like God can use that if they're preaching truth, as long as it's truth, you know. Like if they're just lying, like that's a little bit different. But if they are preaching from the Bible and it is true information,
but just with like a different tone.
Yeah, they're doing it from a different motive. You know, they're doing it out of evil motives. Like I have selfishness. Yeah. But at least the word's getting out. You know, and it's like I thought that was so cool because I'm like, wow, like God can really use anything. You know, it doesn't have to be from this, you know, pure intrinsically good source. You know, it's like God will use it if it's truth.
Yeah, I think a good point to add on is that we're all equal. You know, at the end of the day, we're all equal, and we're equal because we're all sinners. And there's no like scale. There's no like pyramid social system of like how bad of a sinner you are. You know, like, it's like, you know, that like social system in history. It's like in like Buddhist times they would have like a high priest, and then like, you know, the soldiers, the merchants, and then like the untouchables at the bottom. Like you are really bad. Yeah. But really, it's like I had another conversation with my friend, different friend, but we were walking back from the 4th of July party, and it was raining, and I kind of been like nudging him like a little bit with like some faith stuff, like some God stuff, you know. Yeah. Kind of nudging him a little bit, and then I was like, you know, like it was like raining. It started raining really hard. I'm like, this is God's way of like washing all the sins away from the earth. And my friend goes, well, if that's the case, it'd be raining on me all the time. And I said, if it's raining on you, then it's raining on all of us, because we're all equal. We all sin the same amount, you know? It's just if we have the conviction to seek forgiveness.
I mean, I feel like that's just like a cool analogy, because honestly, it's like what he's saying. I'm like, yeah, it's raining.
Dude, I dropped bars. Let me tell you. I thought I was like, man.
I mean, like both of you were saying like truth. Really, it's like like everyone, you know, needs it. Outside of Jesus, I mean, everyone needs like, you know, the cleansing and the washing of like their soul. Really, it's like, I mean, I was talking with one of my friends, and we were talking about, I think it was like sanctification, which is literally just like the idea that you're getting more like Jesus and like more like God throughout, like, you know, it's like you become more like him.
You become less worldly and more
exactly
as your life goes on.
And that's just sanctification. And we were talking about like, really, like he said something that I thought was really cool, and he said, you know, he's like, really, like life here is just a fight against the flesh. And I was like, wow, like that is like, because it's so true, you know, like, but you do have a choice in that. Like, you know, it's like, what do you pick? Do you pick between the things that you feel like right now, or like the choice of like infinite reward later, you know? Yeah, it's crazy. There's another
question.
One. Yeah, this one I also read. I really like this question because I think it's a very good question.
You think all your questions are good?
Well, that's because I wrote them. I wrote them down because I thought they were a good question. I'm like, dude, that is a great question. I read this online there, and someone was like, there's almost like two questions in here. The first one is like, there's no consensus in like the church. It's like, how come everyone has their own idea of what Christianity is? And like you look at like, why is there Catholics and what, I don't know. I don't know what the other ones are.
We talked a little bit about this outside of this, right?
Did we?
Isn't that what you brought up? I think so.
Probably. But like he was basically just asking like why are there different denominations?
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, my answer is like, well, first of all, I don't necessarily think only one denomination is going to heaven. Like I think that's like a silly belief. Number one, like I can't, I'm never gonna say who and who isn't, because I'm not God. So
like as long as you love God with all your soul,
yeah,
mind,
like
heart,
if you
and
truly
strength.
do, if you truly like confess your sins and like
No matter what denomination you are, no matter like you said earlier, as long as the word's getting out, God will use that somehow. So even if you grow up in like a very, very Catholic church that's like very like buckled down, you know, at the end of the day, we all have the same beliefs.
I think as long as we can all agree that Jesus was God's son, he came down, and he died for our sins.
Exactly.
And it's like, and if we confess our sins, like, you'd be forgiving, you know.
I think the denominations occurred because it's like trying to explain the Holy Trinity. You're trying to take God-sized concepts and put them in people-sized understanding, because we have a very closed-minded intelligence compared to God. God's intelligence is infinite. It's never ending, you know. Like we can't even think to imagine.
Can't even imagine how big it is.
I just thought like what if we get to heaven and there's this like version of the Bible that's like completely unhinged, and it's like God's like infinite intellect, and you can read it and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a saying where people are like, if I had God's power, I would change a lot of things, but if I had God's wisdom, I would change nothing. And I'm like, wow, like that's crazy. But when it comes to denominations, I think of, we actually had a sermon at my church that I thought was really good, and the speaker said I don't agree with everything that a Catholic person believes. Like I think they're wrong about some things. She's like, but I'm also wrong about some things, you know. And I was like, yeah, like that's really all it is. It's like I almost think of it as like political views. Almost, it's kind of similar in that sense, where people are like, oh, I'm whatever this party, but the problem is they don't agree with everything in the party. They just agree with some, and it's like because
they
everyone has
agree
their own
with most.
it's like they agree like most, but then there's like little things, and I'm like, with every denomination, you're just picking like what you believe, but ultimately like no one has all the answers. So like all like the little details, I think they can be important. I think it's definitely important to like really like, you know, dive deep in the Bible and really like learn, like, because I think it gives you a better picture of like who God is really. But at the same time, I'm like, I think division because of like slightly different beliefs and stuff like that, I'm like, that's not the point. That's not the point of the Bible. It's not like this like handbook, like it is in like a rule sense. Like I'm like, it's like a story, and like the God didn't, if he wanted us to just believe, like he didn't just like, here's a list of things, like here's all the rules, follow all these, and do all these, and do all these, and he's like, no, that he sent Jesus to be a representation of that. It's like, he's like, be like him, you know, like here's what Jesus did, and like instead of just telling us, he like showed us. I think there's like a big difference there. But
what would you say to someone that believes in the Big Bang Theory? They're like, prove to me that it isn't real.
The Big Bang. So Big Bang Theory is in like no God, and then
no God, nothing collided with nothing and created everything.
So nothing created everything.
Yeah, that's what like we say the answer when we're talking about it. It's like there has to be some other higher power that creates that, because you can't take nothing that collides. Like you can't take like no matter that collides with another clump of nothing.
Yeah.
And they collide, and they have this explosion, and boom, we have the flowers that grow in our grass. We have the sun that's in the sky. You know, we have all the planets in the galaxy, you know? Yeah.
When it comes to like Big Bang Theory, I'm like, I guess God could have created it in a Big Bang. I'm like, that's like my answer. I was like, maybe.
It was just a giant 7-day bang.
Dude, yeah. I mean, like, then there's like some debates between like evolution and
6
stuff.
6-day bang.
6 day.
On the 7th day, God rise.
Oh, that's right. But like, I mean, like that's the first like logical like argument is you're like, okay, so like which one makes more sense? You know, did God create everything, or did nothing create everything? Yeah. Because you got to pick one. Like you can't choose to not believe, like, because there's another thing called agnostic, which is basically you're saying you either don't know. There's like a couple versions of it. It's like either don't know or you can't know. Which don't quite work, because it's like when you're choosing a belief, like when you're saying you don't know, that's a belief. If you say you can't know, then that's just a self-defeating argument. But because how can you know that you can't know? But
you're just like you're hindering yourself basically. You're basically saying it's like kind of like it's like if you're let's say like all right. So for context, I'm a powerlifter. So if I'm getting under X amount of weight on a squat, and I think I can't do this, I probably won't be able to do it. Like if it's like a PR, if it's like the best I've ever done, like one of my other lifting friends, he's like, you have to have 110% confidence in yourself that you have the ability to do this. Because even if you have that little sliver in the pie chart that you think, oh, what if this goes bad? What if this goes wrong? What if I can't do it? What if something messes up? Then you're not going to be able to do it. You have to have 110% confidence in your faith. And I think it's the same thing with your faith, with your lifting.
Okay.
But I think it's the same as your faith.
Okay.
Because you have to be all in on God to reap all the rewards from Him.
Do you think that you can truly be 100% sure? Like 2 + 2 = 4, sure.
But 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4. Who can prove that?
Ooh.
God can.
Well, see, because I don't know if you can be, just because of our like human nature. It's like, can you really truly be 100% sure? Which here's what I think.
Maybe that was kind of like an ignorant comparison, but that's my point.
Yeah, like because
Like
ultimately I'm like,
side.
I think you can be sure beyond a reasonable doubt. Like with all the evidence you can look at it and you're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like without a reasonable doubt, I'm like, I believe God's real. I'm like, I think that's absolutely true. But ultimately, it's like, it's a matter of like choice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to believe it or no? That's really the ultimate question.
How would you compare Christianity to the other three major religions?
What, like Islam and
Judaism.
I haven't looked too far into them. I would like to know a little bit more about them. I think the problem is it's Islam is they don't believe Jesus was God.
Yeah.
I think they believe he was like a prophet.
They had Muhammad. Muhammad was the prophet, and Jesus was. So in Islam, I think, if I remember this from my AP World class correctly, Islam, they thought Jesus was just a dude and Muhammad was like the real prophet. The difference that I see in them is that God is on a higher level than they are. And like that's for our case too, but like we're always looking up to Jesus, like if it would be Islam and Christianity eyes, we would always be looking up to Jesus and we would always be praising Jesus and he would command us to do things. But it's more, the difference is that we have that interpersonal relationship with Jesus, He gets down on our level. He washes our feet type thing, The gods from the other religions wouldn't do that. They don't. It's like they're just all high and mighty, and like they wouldn't demean themselves to come down to your level, because you're so worldly and bad and whatever.
Yeah, but the thing, I mean, like the other problem with thinking that Jesus was like a good teacher or just like a regular dude, it's like the problem is like those things can't coexist. He either has to be like a madman or Jesus. Like it's
either the wisest person on earth or the craziest person on earth.
Because the thing is, he can't. Yeah, exactly. He can't just be like a wise person because he said he was God. It's like you gotta be crazy. If he really wasn't, you have to be crazy to say that. And it's like, how can it's like, should you really be trusted him?
Yeah.
He's saying the most wild stuff. But that's why you can't really have like in between. It's either God or he was just some psycho. But I'm like, I don't know much about Muhammad, but I don't know. I think the Bible has a lot more backing up. There's a lot more. I mean, it was the most one of the most well kept documents of like history. Really, like there's a little bit before it, but we can close out.
Okay. All right. So explain, if you wanted the people to leave with one thought. Wrap it up in one sentence. What do you want them to take away from this episode?
I would say like ask yourself if you're reasonably being talked out of religion, or like not even religion, but like God, I think. Or whether it's for other reasons, like it's like, because I think there can be other reasons, like whether it's people that hurt you, because it's like, I'm like, there's terrible people in the church. It happens.
100%.
There's terrible people everywhere. But I'm like, but is it your belief against God, or is it your belief against religion? There's a difference. Yeah. It's like, it's not, God isn't religion. It's above that. Yeah. I think religion's a great doorway. It's like a way of like finding other people that are like you, and you can be in community together. Yeah. But I think that's really the ultimate question. Is it are you like emotionally against it, or are you like not convinced? Yeah.
I think my thing is that I want to leave with the people is if you're curious, don't be a bystander. Ask questions. That's what I was.
Yeah.
I was curious. I had questions, but I wouldn't ask. And I would just stay in my lane for a while, for a good while. But then I started asking questions.
Yeah.
Because people made me ask questions.
Yeah.
And really, like, just go to people that you trust and ask them questions. And if they don't know, then find another person.
Yeah.
Ask another person.
Yeah.
That's that mentality of believing in Jesus. It's you never stop pursuing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'll leave you guys with. Always be in pursuit. Always be striving for more with your relationship with Jesus.
What he said, if you seek me, you will find. And I believe that. I'm like, I have found. And the more I've looked, the more I've found.
Open the door.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in to the second episode. I know it's been a brick. It's been a while since we recorded. But hopefully we're going to try to bring you guys more episodes. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. If you're watching on Spotify, follow us. Follow our podcast on Spotify. Turn on those post notifications. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
See y'all.